The story begins with the goddess turning a person's soul into a spore and narrating that the #1 killer of humanity throughout history is something known as a virus. The goddess finds it fascinating that someone wishes to become a virus, so she grants his wish by transforming him into one. She then drops the spore into a deep forest. The spore lands on a rat's nose and slips inside, invading its nucleus and replicating mutated cells. Eventually, the spore takes over the entire body. The infected rat then gains consciousness, feels a bit headache, and wonders why he is outside. He also finds his perspective very strange and distorted. Then, the person now inhabiting the rat sees a puddle of water. Upon staring at his reflection, he is shocked to realize that he has become a rat. Confused and panicking, he wonders what is happening and how he ended up like this, as he clearly remembers being at work just moments ago. Suddenly, a plant root bursts from the ground, launching itself at a 3-legged bird. Terrified, he quickly hides behind a tree and watches as the plant completely devours the bird. Witnessing this bizarre scene, the person controlling the rat makes a grim realization that he is in another world. Memories begin to resurface as he recalls working at his pharmaceutical company and staying late after everyone else had left to conduct personal research in the lab. He recalls nothing beyond that point, leading him to conclude that something must have gone terribly wrong during the experiment, likely resulting in his death. Afterwards, he finds himself floating in a pure white space, where a woman claiming to be the goddess appears. She spins some kind of roulette and informs him that in his next life, he will become a virus. Recalling this, the now rat person realizes that he hasn't reincarnated as a rat, but instead has reincarnated as a virus controlling the rat's body. However, being a researcher, he finds it ridiculous to believe in the goddess, but given the circumstances, it seems he has indeed reincarnated. He finds the situation deeply ironic and believes it is karma that he has reincarnated as a rat, the very creature that he often experimented on. Accepting this new reality, he decides to explore what he is currently capable of and ponders what he should do next. Just then, he notices red particles coming out of his mouth and is surprised to see viruses with the naked eye. Realizing that these particles are part of himself, he wonders if he can take control of the rat's perspective as the virus. To test this, he begins intensely concentrating on the particles inside the rat's body and successfully shifts his viewpoint into that of the virus. Now in virus form, he observes his surroundings and realizes that he is inside the capillaries. Knowing it would be dangerous if any white blood cells detect a virus, he decides to leave the capillaries. Eventually, he comes across a cell wall and plans to use it. But just then, he notices something unusual, a lump slowly forming on the cell wall. To his surprise, the lump turns into a copy of his current virus form. As more copies emerge from the cell membrane, he is both fascinated and disgusted at the same time. Setting that aside, he approaches another virus cell and inquires if it can talk. However, the virus cell remains unresponsive, leading him to conclude that he is the only virus with a will. Since he is the only virus with a will, he wonders if it is his role to command the massive number of virus cells. Though he doesn't know how to do it, he decides to give it a shot and commands a nearby virus cell to follow him. In an instant, all the viruses gather around him, responding to his command. This shocks him, as he didn't expect them to accumulate so quickly. With all the virus cells now following him, he realizes he can control them from a distance to a certain extent. However, further experimentation is needed, and he decides to leave that for later. He is still struggling to adapt to this new reality. Being a virus with awareness and collective thoughts doesn't make any sense to him. And even as a former researcher, he finds these new abilities as a virus difficult to comprehend. Then suddenly, he hears a voice in his head informing him of his current traits: infectivity, control, and duplication. At first, the virus is startled and questions who the announcer is. Then he wonders if the traits mentioned are his abilities, as he did indeed infect a rat, which aligns with the infectivity trait, and duplicate himself inside the rat, corresponding to the duplication trait. That leaves the control trait, which he used to take control of the rat's body. Since there's no rule limiting him to only possessing a rat, he decides to find a new host with a stronger life force as soon as possible. The system-like announcer then informs him that because he has sufficiently infected the bush rat, he has acquired the conditions: cowardice, danger detection, and agility. Being a former researcher, he quickly realizes that these conditions, cowardice, danger detection, and agility, are actually the rat's abilities. Writing them into his RNA means he has copied the rat's abilities simply by infecting it. Realizing he can copy the abilities of any creature he infects, the rat bursts into laughter, finding the situation fascinating, and eagerly begins searching for a new host. As a former researcher, he has never seen an organism evolve at such a rapid speed in modern times. Depending on how this new ability is used, he could literally become the deadliest creature in history. While searching for a new host to verify the system's information, he stops near a flower and wonders if his abilities work on plants as well. Thus he decides to give it a try and releases virus particles onto the flower. To his amazement, he successfully infects the plant and acquires the conditions: fever reducer and pain reliever. This confirms that his ability also works on plants. As he was thinking how useful the fever reducer and pain reliever conditions are, a strong gust of wind passes by, carrying the virus particles in its direction. The particles splatter onto the monstrous plant that he witnessed devouring a three-legged bird earlier. Since the monster plant came into contact with the virus particles, he wonders what kind of ability he will gain next. However, the system doesn't announce anything this time, so he takes a closer look at the monster plant and wonders if his infection potency isn't strong enough to let him acquire a skill immediately after gaining another one. As he's planning to do more research with the monster plant, it suddenly closes its mouth with a crushing force. Fortunately, he reacts just in time, jumping back and barely escaping the monster plant's jaws. This terrifies him, and he realizes that he is only a weak little rat right now. Still, he is certain that he has tremendous potential as a virus. He then recalls that viruses like smallpox spread across Earth more than 10,000 years ago. However, in this new world, he is most likely the origin of all viruses, which he finds incredible. On top of that, the irony isn't lost on him. A human who once made medicine to combat viruses has now reincarnated as one. For someone who was just getting fed up with his life anyway, this feels like the perfect twist. As a virus, he believes that if he continues to increase his abilities, he could one day become the main force of this world, perhaps even causing a pandemic to control humanity. However, he isn't sure if humans even exist in this world and wonders if he should start searching for them right away. Then suddenly, his body begins trembling as his danger detection condition activates. He quickly looks around and notices water drops falling from above. When he looks up, he sees a wolf standing behind him, its eyes fixed on him, drooling at the sight of the rat. Terrified, he tries to escape, but then his condition cowardice also activates, leaving him completely immobilized. Panic overwhelms him as he desperately tries to move, wondering why his conditions have to activate at such a critical moment. Helpless, he watches in horror as the wolf creeps closer and takes the rat in one bite. In that moment, he believes his life as a virus has come to an end. Meanwhile, the goddess observes everything unfolding and refers to him as the one who chose the virus. Then, she corrects herself, rephrasing it as the one who was chosen by the virus. The scene shifts to a research institute at night where working hours have ended. As the last two researchers leave, they notice a man who has stayed behind in the lab, conducting an experiment. Curious, one of them asks the other what that person is doing in the lab. The other replies that the man claimed to be researching a new species of virus. Finding it unusual for someone to work alone so late, she asks if it's really okay. The other researcher responds that he isn't sure but prefers to leave it alone, as that person is terrible at socializing, and no one knows what he's thinking, so it's best not to get involved. That socially awkward person is our protagonist, who now watches this flashback and wishes he didn't have to relive this unpleasant moment now that he has reincarnated. He wonders what he was doing, and then recalls being eaten by a wolf, along with his host. This makes him really frustrated, as the moment he had reincarnated into something interesting, a virus, he lost his life again. Well, what's done is done, and he can't change it. But he still can't bear the thought of being reborn as a human again and repeating the same mundane cycle every day. No matter how much he would like to continue living as a virus, it seems inevitable, as his life as a virus has come to an end. But like hell, he'll let it end like this. He quickly activates his trait infectivity and commands all his virus cells to use the capillaries to spread throughout the wolf's body. They are going to take it over. He also activates his trait duplication and orders the virus cells to use the wolf's blood cells to multiply further. By doing this, he plans to increase the number of virus cells in the wolf's body, making it easier to take control. Just then, the wolf reacts as the virus cells have sufficiently infected it. With this step complete, It's time to execute the next part of the plan. He activates his trait control and begins concentrating all the virus cells at once. The system then notifies him that he has acquired the conditions: enhanced smell, endurance, and ferocity. As he starts to regain his vision, he notices his perspective is now from higher up than before, and he can smell blood in his mouth, which tastes oddly satisfying. The reason he can feel all these sensations becomes clear. He has successfully taken over the wolf's body. He is really glad it worked out, as he hadn't expected it to, and he is still in disbelief that he was able to take control so easily. But setting that aside, this is a huge discovery, as this event proves that even if his host dies, as long as he can infect another creature, he won't die, which essentially makes him immortal. He finds the situation fascinating and starts running to find a new creature to experiment on. After running for a while, he hasn't encountered any other creatures yet. Although he can smell them nearby, for some reason none of them approach him, which might be because the wolf is so much higher up on the food chain. That makes sense, as he is radiating so much power that it doesn't even compare to when he was a rat. However, it's starting to get boring being a creature he has already seen in his past life. Even though there are some differences in appearance, in the end it's still just a wolf. As he thinks about how it would have been more interesting if this world had unique creatures like dragons and goblins from fantasy stories, he suddenly notices small humanoid figures. Curious, he takes a closer look and realizes they are goblins. This surprises him, and he questions whether they're real, as they look almost exactly like the goblins in fantasy novels, though a bit smaller. This new discovery makes him wonder if this world resembles the fantasy worlds he read about in his previous life. Either way, goblins are still creatures, and although he never saw one in his past life, he is certain they can be infected as well. With that, he plans to infect them and rushes toward them. But he comes to an abrupt stop when he hears someone shouting about how persistent the goblins are. Hearing this, he wonders if it's what he thinks it is. So he decides to take a closer look to confirm and sees a girl wielding a sword. Tears fill her eyes as she declares that although she still has a long way to go, she is an adventurer and cannot afford to be defeated here. This surprises the virus, as he is certain that she is a human, and he hadn't expected to find one so soon. Suddenly, one of the goblins attacks her and she barely manages to block it with her sword. As she fights the goblins, the virus analyzes the situation, and judging by her appearance and clothing, he concludes that this world's level of civilization is different from Earth's. Setting that aside, the girl appears to be very exhausted. She's wearing light armor and wielding a worn-out sword, while the goblins seem to have more energy to spare than she does. He finds this situation ideal, as a human body is necessary now that he knows humans exist in this world. He can use one to gather information and conduct research. At first, he plans to infect the goblins and acquire their conditions, and after that, he will infect the girl and take over her body. In addition, he plans to try something he's been wanting to do, and combine the agility he gained from the rat with the ferocity he gained from the wolf. By doing this, he successfully makes the wolf inherit a mouse's agility, significantly increasing its speed. Now with this evolved body, he rushes toward the goblins and notices that his body feels much lighter, and his battle nerves have eased up a lot, which is likely due to the effect of his conditioned ferocity. Exhausted, the girl can no longer hold on, and just as the goblins are about to land a finishing blow, the wolf leaps at them, biting one of the goblins and infecting it. This results in the virus acquiring the goblin's condition short-tempered. The wolf then releases the goblin's corpse from its mouth, and since he can taste through the wolf's body, he finds the goblin's taste unpleasant. Meanwhile, the girl is terrified seeing a large gray wolf standing right in front of her. Seeing one of its kind killed, the goblin becomes enraged and leaps to attack the wolf. However, the wolf easily dodges the attack and swiftly gets behind the goblin. He finds it amazing to move so nimbly with this lightweight body, which is very different from his former life as a 30-year-old researcher. Catching the goblin off guard, he eliminates it with ease and acquires the condition, night vision. While the girl realizes that this is no ordinary gray wolf, the last remaining goblin who witnessed the fight becomes terrified and flees. The wolf notices this, and since it would be a hassle to chase after the goblin while risking the human's escape, he uses the infectivity trait on the fleeing goblin and acquires its condition, dexterity. With that taken care of, he shifts his focus to the girl and slowly approaches her. After getting close enough, he analyzes her state and learns that although she's exhausted, she doesn't seem to be seriously injured, making her an ideal candidate for his plans. However, he decides to hold back and think carefully, as there's still so much he doesn't know about this new world. Worst case scenario, if medicine has already been developed to combat his kind, he worries he might be discovered and eradicated immediately if he infects a human. Thus, he resolves to avoid doing anything too conspicuous until he gains more knowledge about this world. However, he feels deeply conflicted, as a human body would be perfect for gathering information, but taking one would also put his life at great risk. Confused by the wolf's behavior, the girl asks if it isn't going to eat her. Reflexively, he tries to tell her to wait because he's still deciding what to do, but since he's in the wolf's body, all that comes out is a woof. The girl is surprised and misinterprets this as a sign that the wolf means no harm and even came to save her. Overcome with gratitude, she hugs the wolf and thanks it for rescuing her. Suddenly, being hugged out of nowhere startles the wolf, and he quickly jumps away. The girl then tries to reassure him by telling him not to be scared and to come closer to her. Watching her act so carelessly, the virus wonders what the heck is going on and who this naive creature could possibly be. She thanks the wolf again for saving her and addresses him as Mr. Wolf. Then she starts blabbering, explaining that she actually tried to avoid the goblins earlier, but thought she could handle them since she had just read a book on swordsmanship. However, it turns out to be much harder than she expected, and suddenly more goblins appear out of nowhere. This makes her wonder if people who are good at fighting simply assume they'll succeed when push comes to shove. Setting that aside, she expresses that she has learned a lot after watching his fight with the goblins. She wonders if, as a wolf living in the wild, must be incredibly dangerous for him, and he must train every day to become so strong. She explains that while she didn't want to take the risk herself, she had no choice because she needed to earn money to afford tasty meals, something the wolf might not get to experience since he lives in the wild. She quickly clarifies that she doesn't mean to imply that what wolves eat tastes bad, though it might for humans. Hearing her talk non-stop, the wolf wonders how long she plans to keep talking to an animal of all things. He's confused by her behavior, and also wonders if all humans in this world are like this. Setting that aside, he hopes to gather some information about this world from her. But she keeps rambling about unrelated things, which makes him bored, causing him to yawn. Seeing his reaction, the girl quickly apologizes, after realizing that she got caught up in her own world while talking to him. Thus, she decided to start over and introduces herself as Elena, an adventurer, and thanks him again for saving her life. Finally, he got some useful information from her, as she refers to herself as an adventurer, something he recognizes from a fantasy novel he read in his previous life. He recalls that it's a job where people earn rewards by defeating monsters and collecting herbs. Since it's a very dangerous line of work, he wonders why this teenage girl is doing it alone. Elena explains that she has been an adventurer for only 2 weeks, and in that time, she has realized she has no talent for it. That's why she struggles even against low-ranking creatures like goblins. The wolf realizes he was wrong to think there's nothing challenging, as goblins turn out to be the lowest-ranked creatures, and since she couldn't defeat them, it means she's fairly weak. Elena then continues, explaining that because she's so weak, no one in the Adventurers Guild wants to pair up with her, forcing her to take on quests solo. Hearing this, the wolf smirks evilly, thinking that if the girl wants to become stronger, it will be an interesting experiment to see if he can strengthen her with his virus. Just then, Elena reaches out her hand and kisses him on the nose, saying that he's her very first adventurer partner, and that it's been so long since she's talked to someone like this, which makes her very happy. Before she can say anything else, the wolf quickly jumps back, falling over in shock at how close she got. As if this were Earth, he would have gotten into serious trouble or been accused of something outrageous. While he's surprised by her happy-go-lucky personality, Elena notices it's already getting dark. She apologizes to the wolf, saying that she has to return to town because it's too dangerous to stay here at night. Though it pains her to leave so soon, it can't be helped. Hearing this, the wolf begins walking alongside her, deciding to escort her back to town, as he considers it his top priority to learn about the place she is living in. Realizing the wolf is accompanying her to town makes Elena very happy, and she compliments him by calling him a gentleman, which leaves him feeling a bit awkward. As they head toward the town, Elena continues her story, explaining that before becoming an adventurer, she used to work in the village fields. It was a small village where everyone lived peacefully like family. However, one day her village was attacked and destroyed by goblins. Though the village was left in ruins, everyone managed to survive. But they realized they might not be so lucky the next time the goblins came, so they decided to move to a new land. Although she was complaining earlier about her lack of talent and how no one wants to pair up with her, she has no intention of giving up on becoming an adventurer. She's determined to become stronger and protect everyone in her village with her own power. She adds that, while she might not look like it, she's confident in her skills from working in the fields. The wolf listens quietly to her story so far and realizes they are somewhat similar. In his previous life, he thought he was developing new medicine for the sake of people, but the more absorbed he became in his work, the more he was treated as an eccentric. This eventually led him to hate humans altogether. Unlike him, she remains positive and still has the desire to protect others, even though she also became an outcast in a similar way. They finally arrive near the town, and Elena points to it, informing the wolf that this is where she lives, a town called Faust. The wolf is visibly surprised at the sight of the town, and Elena remarks that it truly is a large place. Despite living here for a while, she admits she still can't remember the streets at all. The town is much bigger and more populated than the wolf had expected, with facilities he has never seen before, even in his previous life. Seeing all of this, he feels relieved that he chose to be cautious about infecting humans. As if he had, who knows what might have happened. Since they've reached their destination, Elena tells the wolf that while she would like to invite him to the inn to thank him, it might not be possible. Though he is new to this world, he understands that a monster can't just stroll into a town, so it's time for them to part ways. He gently reaches out his paw and taps her, trying to tell her it's okay and that she doesn't need to worry, she should go. Understanding his gesture, she bids him farewell, saying she won't forget his kindness, and hopes they can meet again someday, to which the wolf responds with a soft woof. After waving for a while, she finally leaves, which makes him feel a bit lonely, as it's been a long time since he has been able to spend time with someone. Still, he believes it'll be fine, as they might meet again if she continues as an adventurer. With that thought, he decides to head back to the jungle, but abruptly stops. Thinking about adventurers, his eyes brim with excitement as he wonders if he could try being one too. By becoming an adventurer, he could travel to various lands, take on jobs involving creatures, and further improve his abilities. However, he knows he can't become an adventurer in a wolf's body. For that, he needs a human body, one that is both functional and inconspicuous. Taking over the body of someone like Elena, who is very talkative, wouldn't work, as he doubts he could convincingly imitate her, and it would be bad if someone who knows her well saw through him. Instead, he wonders if he could control a corpse that has lost its identity. However, just thinking about it makes him feel uneasy, as not only might he look like a zombie, but he also doesn't even know if he could move a corpse properly. Just then, he notices a group of goblins right beside him. Although he wants to try acquire some new conditions, he decides that figuring out what to do about a human body should be his top priority for now. While he acknowledges this, he also understands how difficult it might be to find a human body in the forest. However, as he thinks about humans while looking at the goblins, he realizes that goblins are humanoid monsters. With a human-like body and a hood, he might be able to pass as human and sneak into town. Though risky, he believes it's worth giving it a shot and decides to take over a goblin. But the problem is that he must get close to the goblins to infect one, and with 5 of them around, it would be really bad if they end up surrounding him. Just then, he notices one goblin that looks infected, which confuses him. But then he recalls that it's the goblin he infected and let go when he saved Elena. Since there's already an infected goblin, things are different now, as he doesn't have to engage in a battle to infect it. So he decides to quickly take over that goblin, but the issue is that he doesn't know how, as the first time he changed bodies was when the wolf ate him as a rat. Although he wonders if he should let the goblins eat him on purpose, his experience as a rat being eaten was so horrifying that he doesn't want to go through it again. But if there's no other way, he'll have to. Just then, he recalls that when he first regained consciousness as a virus, he successfully switched to the perspective of another virus by concentrating on it. It worked because the viruses are ultimately all parts of him. So he wonders if he can move his consciousness from here to another virus cell inside the infected goblin. He decides to give it a shot and begins intensely concentrating on the virus cell inside the infected goblin. As he focuses, the goblin starts to feel weak, sweating profusely and coughing. Eventually, he successfully takes over the goblin's body and gasps, which catches the attention of the other goblins, and they all turn to look at him. When he was in the wolf's body, he thought nothing of goblins, but now at eye level, he finds them terrifying. Suddenly, one goblin approaches and calls out to him. Panicking, he wonders if he did something strange. The goblin then offers to help carry his bag, and he quickly accepts, handing it over while thanking the goblin. This interaction surprises him, making him wonder if he has completely taken over the goblin's mind, as despite its primitive nature, he can understand their speech. Then another goblin talks to him, sympathizing with him as it mentions being attacked by a wolf before the virus took control. Then, a female goblin approaches and gives him a herb, saying it will calm his mind. Unsure how to respond, he simply takes the herb and starts chewing it. Seeing this, the female goblin tells him not to overdo it. These interactions surprise him, as he didn't expect goblins to be this kind. Setting that aside, he wonders what happened to the wolf he was controlling. So he looks behind the bush to see the wolf, which appears to be very confused. Seeing this, he wonders if the wolf's original consciousness regained control after he left. Suddenly, the wolf turns its head towards him, and the moment their eyes meet, the wolf starts growling and smirks menacingly. Alarmed, he quickly warns the other goblins, but the wolf is already too close. As they all start running, he realizes they can't escape with these goblin legs. So he comes up with an idea, following which he uses his infectivity trait to infect the goblins. Once the required conditions are met, he was able to give them the conditions, stamina and agility. With these new conditions enhancing their speed, they climb to a higher ground where the wolf can't reach them, thus escaping it. Now that they're safe, the goblins begin celebrating, taunting the wolf by saying that they're faster than it, when in truth, it's all thanks to the virus. Setting that aside, he's relieved his plan worked, and in doing so, he makes a significant discovery, that he can share conditions by infecting others, which could have various uses. For now, he decides to follow these goblins, as it might be interesting, and he's also getting used to this body. Then the goblins announce that they're heading back to their den, still full of energy, which is again all thanks to him. Later, they arrive in front of a cave guarded by 2 goblins with spears. As they enter the cave, the guard goblins salute them, prompting the virus to awkwardly salute back. Although he is surprised that the goblins are smart enough to make a cave their den, he finds the environment appalling, as nearly all of them are wearing only a single loincloth and are skin and bones. While he analyzes the surroundings, the female goblin reminds everyone that the boss will be angry because there is so little food. As he wonders who this boss is, they proceed to a giant goblin addressed as Lord Hobgoblin, who is furious because they are so late. The virus is shocked upon seeing the hobgoblin, and while helping the other goblins take food out of the bag, he examines the hobgoblin more carefully. Although it resembles a goblin, its size is that of a giant human man. This makes the virus wonder if this is what an evolved goblin looks like, a hobgoblin. Once the goblins finishes taking out the food, the hobgoblin asks if that's all they brought. One of the goblins replies affirmatively, explaining that the orcs stole all their prey, leaving nothing behind. Quietly observing this interaction, the virus notices how similar the hobgoblin's movements and body structure are to a human's. Since this is exactly the type of body he's been searching for, he decides to take over the hobgoblin. Although blending into town with such a body won't draw much attention, he knows he'll need to address the issue of its green skin and find appropriate clothes. Setting aside the appearance problem, he concludes that the hobgoblin's body is the closest to human he can find in the jungle, and it clearly has stronger vitality than the goblins. With no prey left, the hobgoblin orders the goblins to attack the human village. One goblin protests, saying humans are too strong and they can't win. Enraged, the hobgoblin kicks the goblin in the face, declaring that they're all alive because of him. He stomps on the goblin while demanding more food and calling it useless. The virus then comes up with a plan and yells at the hobgoblin, telling him to find the food he wants to eat himself. Hearing this, the hobgoblin angrily asks the virus what he just said. Now that the hobgoblin has taken the bait and is fairly close, he decides to push it further, loudly telling the hobgoblin that he is nothing but a block-headed baby who lounges on his throne and begs for food. The reason he is trying to lure the hobgoblin closer is that he has mixed virus particles into his breath, and by shouting, he aims to infect the hobgoblin, which actually worked. However, the system then informs him that the hobgoblin has virus resistance, so the infection will take time to complete. While he is shocked to learn about the virus resistance, the hobgoblin grabs him by the head, saying that he has some nerve going against his lord. Unsure how long the infection will take, the virus decides to struggle in the hobgoblin's grip until it does. The hobgoblin then announces that because the orcs have ruined the land, he no longer needs the goblins and will leave the area on his own. Just then, the system informs the virus that the duplication trait is commencing on the target's body. As the hobgoblin smirks, declaring that all the goblins will get eaten by orcs, the system confirms that the hobgoblin's body has been taken over. The virus then responds to the hobgoblin, stating that before they get eaten by the orcs, he will eat him. At that moment, the hobgoblin lets go of the goblin's body. As the other goblins panic and call out to their lord, the virus, who is now in control of the hobgoblin, smiles brightly at them. He then says that everything he had been saying was what he thought until now. But starting today, he changes his mind and considers them his friends, so they should all get along. The system then informs him that he has received the conditions: brute strength, patience, and claws. This amazes him, as they all seem incredibly useful in battle, which is to be expected since they come from the leader of the goblins. Just then, his celebration is abruptly cut short when the goblin guarding the cave rushes in and announces that the enemies are right outside. It turns out to be a group of orcs who are demanding that this land belongs to them and orders the goblins to leave immediately. The virus, who is now a hobgoblin, then comes out of the cave with a sword, accompanied by all the goblins, including some injured ones. Although they're fairly armed, they are still trembling in fear at the sight of the orcs. Despite this, he initially thought that they might have a chance. However, after seeing the sheer size and number of the orcs, he feels overwhelmed. He begins to understand why the hobgoblin lord planned to abandon the goblins, as he would have done the same in this situation. Because there's no way they can win against the orcs with such weak and injured goblins. However, he has no intention of running, as his infection ability allows him not only to enhance himself, but also to grant conditions to others. Something he discovered while escaping the wolf as a goblin. This situation is also an ideal opportunity to test out various conditions, and in the worst-case scenario, he can use his agility condition to escape. With this plan in mind, his only concern is that the goblins are too terrified to fight effectively, even with conditions making them stronger. As their leader, he decides to inspire them with a motivational speech, so he mixes virus particles into his breath again, and then loudly urges the goblins not to be afraid. He tells them to protect their home with everything they have, emphasizing that they must overcome their fear, as they are stronger than they think and should give him their full support. As the virus spreads among them, he begins the process of granting them the conditions: stamina, agility, brute strength, and claws. These are the only conditions he can transfer at the moment. As the conditions take effect, he notices changes in their bodies, and to his shock, all the goblins have evolved into something like hobgoblins. This transformation is far more dramatic than he anticipated, and he wonders if the brute strength condition caused it. However, he worries that they might become suspicious of this sudden change. To his relief, the goblins believe their evolution is due to the hobgoblin lord's inspiring speech, which they think has physically strengthened them. He is really glad that they are such simpletons, and now that this matter is settled, he decides to proceed with his first large-scale experiment. Seeing the sudden changes in the goblins, the orcs grow confused about what has happened. They wonder if the goblins are using some kind of body-strengthening magic. However, they believe goblins aren't smart enough to do something like that. The virus feels confident about going against the orcs, as not only are the goblins' individual strengths now equal to the orcs, but they also completely outnumber them. Suddenly, the system informs the virus that it has discovered several new conditions, which are covert, evasion, fatigue, starvation, and exhaustion. As he is surprised by how many conditions he has acquired just from infecting all the goblins, he begins to gain even more: hunger, anemia, nimble, good walker, and insight. Additionally, his existing conditions, short temper, night vision, and dexterity, level up to 2. Since he hasn't actively used these conditions for them to improve, he wonders if acquiring duplicates of the same conditions causes them to merge and strengthen. This realization excites him, as it means he can gain even more powerful conditions by infecting the orcs. Confident, he provokes the orcs, mocking them by asking what happened to all their hype and whether they are now scared like pigs. Enraged, one of the orcs charges at him, yelling that despite the goblins looking different, they are still goblins and can never match the orcs. The hobgoblin then lifts his sword high and slams it down on the attacking orc, eliminating it in a single strike. This astonishes the goblins, who realize their lord is far stronger than usual today, and even the orcs notice that he is unusually fast. In truth, the virus was unsure if he could even wield the sword properly, but thanks to his level 2 dexterity condition, he can handle it pretty well. and although he knows that he should be scared, for some reason he feels fired up. Then more orcs rush to attack him, but he eliminates them effortlessly with a single slash while also infecting them. With each infection, he acquires new conditions: tenacity, strong arm, willpower, pain suppression, and frenzy. Realizing he has gained a ton of amazing conditions from just a few orcs, he understands that orcs are much higher on the food chain than goblins. However, thanks to the conditions he gave to the goblins, defeating them will now be extremely difficult. He then infects more orcs and gains even more conditions like body manipulation, fatigue recovery, and tonic. Meanwhile, the orc lord realizes that they are outnumbered by the abnormally strong goblins, so he quickly orders his subordinate to bring out what they captured yesterday. The subordinate hesitates, explaining that the captive isn't fully trained yet and could cause collateral damage. But the orc lord, unwilling to admit defeat to goblins, angrily commands him to release it anyway. Just then, an orc catches a goblin off guard and is about to land a finishing blow. But before it can strike, the conditions fatigue and anemia activate, causing the orc to stagger. This gives the goblin enough time to eliminate it. The virus just now discovers that he can activate negative conditions on infected monsters, which is a huge breakthrough, and it's all thanks to the orcs. However, right now, he's starting to feel like a god punishing the orcs for their greed. Despite this, he feels somewhat bad for them and believes it's unfair to drag out the battle when the outcome is already decided, so he decides to end it immediately. Then suddenly a loud thunderclap echoes, sending shivers down his spine. Startled, he quickly turns around, wondering what just happened as he hears thunder despite the sky lacking enough clouds to produce it. He then notices something large slowly approaching, and as it gets closer, he is shocked to see an orc holding a chain leash attached to a massive bear with horns surrounded by crackling electricity. Terrified, a goblin quickly identifies the creature as an electric bear. Hearing this, the virus wonders if it's called that because it can harness the power of electric currents. The orc then orders the electric bear to attack the goblins, declaring that they are its prey. However, in response, the bear glares at the orc as its horns begin to spark with increasing electricity. Then the bear strikes the orc with a powerful thunderbolt, reducing it to ashes. The virus is shocked by the sheer destructive power of the bear's electricity and realizes that the orcs haven't trained it at all. This makes him wonder just how far the orcs are willing to go to avoid losing to the goblins, as they must have known that bringing this creature here would cause massive collateral damage. One of the goblins then suggests they run away, as there's no way they can defeat the electric bear, the strongest being in the area. However, the virus has no intention of retreating, as he doesn't believe that he'll lose, and he finds the bear's electrical abilities incredibly fascinating, so there's no way he'll let an opportunity like this slip away. Although he agrees that the bear looks extremely powerful, he is confident he can infect it, but still he decides to be cautious, as it might take time to infect the bear, just like it did with the hobgoblin lord. He then borrows a spear from a goblin and cuts his own hand, coating the weapon with his blood, which is infused with the virus. The reason he's doing this is because getting close to the bear would be too dangerous, especially after witnessing an orc reduced to ashes by its electricity. So, he plans to throw the virus-coated spear at the bear from a safe distance, hoping to pierce its skin and infect it. With his plan in place, he throws the spear at the electric bear. However, to his shock, the spear is repelled by the bear's fur, which is far tougher than he expected. However, his attempt isn't entirely fruitless, as despite the spear failing to pierce the bear's skin and deliver the virus cells, he gains two conditions: lightning resistance and blade-proof fur. He hypothesizes that while the spear didn't pierce the bear, some of his blood might have splashed into the bear's eye, allowing him to obtain these conditions. If that's the case, he wonders if he can send his consciousness into the virus inside the bear's body. However, when he focuses and tries to connect with the virus cells, it doesn't work. He realizes that there aren't enough virus cells inside the bear for him to transfer his consciousness. As he ponders the issue, he notices the electric currents bouncing between the bear's horns and body. This leads him to suspect that the continuous electric generation might be destroying the virus cells inside the bear's body. Just then, the bear stands up, charging its electricity to prepare an attack. Seeing this, the virus quickly prepares to block it. When the bear unleashes its powerful current, he narrowly avoids serious damage, thanks to his newly acquired lightning resistance condition. Unfortunately, the goblins beside him, lacking any such resistance, are reduced to ashes. The bear doesn't stop there as it releases another electric attack, reducing even more goblins to ashes. Seeing this, the goblins retreat to a safer distance, and the virus realizes he can't do anything with the current conditions at his disposal. He admits to himself that he was too overconfident in his power and needs to run, as he can't afford to lose the hobgoblin's body. Just then, he notices the bear charging its electric power again to attack the goblins, who are too panicked to get away. He decides to take advantage of the situation and use the goblins as a decoy while he escapes. But as he looks at the goblins about to be reduced to ashes, he just can't do it. The bear finishes charging its electricity, and as it prepares to strike the goblins with thunder, the virus quickly tackles the bear, trying to push it away with all his strength. He feels disbelief as he realizes he let his emotions get the better of him and caused him to do something so illogical. Struggling to hold back the bear, he notices the goblins calling out his name in worry. Suddenly, the bear bites his hand with such crushing force that it renders his hand completely useless. However, he isn't too worried about it. In fact, it's somewhat going according to his plan. Earlier, when he tried to infect the bear through its skin, the virus cells were immediately eliminated by the electric current. However, some virus cells managed to invade the bear's body through its eyes, which allowed him to acquire 2 new conditions. This makes the possibility of infecting the bear clear. Since the electricity is only on the surface of its body and not inside, he can directly funnel blood into the bear through its mouth. And the plan actually worked, as the moment the bear swallows the blood from his injured hand, the virus cells infect it from the inside. Fortunately, the bear doesn't have any virus resistance conditions, allowing the process to work quickly. Now that the bear is infected, he wastes no time and begins activating as many negative conditions as possible, including anemia, hunger, fatigue, starvation, and exhaustion. As the negative conditions take effect, he acquires new ones: electrocution, electric absorption, and shock resistance. With the bear weakened by negative conditions, he activates several conditions to buff himself. These conditions include claws, body manipulation, blade-proof fur, and strong arms. Using this combination, his hand begins transforming into a claw similar to the bear's. Seeing this, the bear realizes something is wrong and quickly decides to eliminate the hobgoblin before he becomes even stronger. Thus, it immediately strikes him with lightning. But the attack has no effect, because he has accumulated multiple lightning resistance conditions that have merged, greatly enhancing his immunity to lightning. This makes the bear's most powerful attack completely useless against him. Now that it's his turn to strike, he focuses all his strength into his claw and swiftly slashes the bear, eliminating it in a single blow, and gains the conditions: magic generation, electromagnetic release, and agitation. He feels relieved that he wasn't actually overconfident, and is indeed strong enough to defeat the bear. However, using so many conditions at once, combined with the intensity of the fight, takes a heavy toll on the hobgoblin's body. This causes him to stagger, and he eventually collapses, leaving the goblins both worried and surprised by his now fluffy claw. A few days later, the goblins bring him plenty of food, and cheerfully tell him to take a look at how much prey they've caught. It has been 3 days since his fight with the electric bear, and during this time, he has been living with the goblins to heal. The atmosphere is lively, and everyone seems happy. As with the orcs gone, the goblins no longer worry about being hunted and find it easier to gather food. The reason the goblins appear to be back to their original state is that he temporarily removed their conditions, ensuring no humans notice they are mutant goblins and send someone to deal with them. Setting that aside, the injuries he sustained during the fight with the bear were severe, fatal enough to prevent a normal being from surviving. However, since he isn't normal, he manages a complete recovery using his healing and vitality conditions. 2 goblins then offer him a fruit they think is tasty. He politely responds that he's fine and they should eat it instead. The goblins cheerfully reply that they love him and insist they brought the fruit just for him to eat. Sitting with the goblins, surrounded by their joy, he feels happy as it's the first time he's been liked by so many, even if they are goblins. This makes him think that staying here a little longer as their leader might not be so bad. Then, a goblin approaches him with something strange and hands it to him. As he examines the object, he recalls his original goal. Although he enjoys his time here, he realizes that, as a virus, he wants to explore how far he can go. The object the goblin gave him is a mask, and he wonders if it might allow him to enter a human town unnoticed. Few days later, as he decides to leave and begins putting on the clothes the goblins found for him, they worriedly ask if he is really going. He replies affirmatively, and apologizes for leaving so abruptly. As he finishes dressing, he finds the clothes in this world very uncomfortable and odd to wear, but assumes they must be the norm here. He then tells the goblins that during his battle with the bear, he realized he isn't strong enough and has decided to embark on a journey to become stronger. The goblins start crying and protest that he is already strong enough to protect them, begging him not to abandon them. He replies that it's a hard decision for him to leave them too, but it can't be helped. He never expected to grow so attached to something like goblins. It almost feels like the love of a loyal pet dog or something similar. Then the female goblin, with tears in her eyes, offers him the electric bear's fur, which is very durable, warm, and useful in many ways. Seeing the goblins crying and sobbing, he can't bear it anymore and tries to cheer them up. He assures them that they are plenty strong, reminding them how they fought on equal footing with the orcs. And because they are strong enough to protect the nest, he feels confident in leaving on this journey to become even stronger. Thus, he asks them to protect the nest for him and promises that he will definitely return. Hearing this, the goblins glance at each other and then back at him. Motivated by his promise to return, they assure him that they will protect his nest and tell him to go on his journey without worrying about them. With that settled, he finally leaves for the town with peace of mind, knowing there are no more orcs left in the area. Before departing, he gives the goblins additional helpful conditions to protect themselves, but only to the extent that it won't draw suspicion from humans. As the goblins loudly wish him good luck on his journey and bid him farewell, he resolves to check on them if he ever passes by this area again. As he plans to visit the town of Faust, the place Elena told him about, he realizes that even if he runs into her again, she wouldn't recognize him. After all, he looks completely different from when he was a wolf. However, he holds on to hope, believing that if he becomes an adventurer like her, there might be a chance to talk to her again. Thinking about becoming an adventurer, he quickly checks his appearance again, wondering if he looks human enough and isn't too suspicious. Fortunately, he has managed to cover all of the goblin's unique green skin and has been practicing speaking for the past few days. But he is still unsure whether his speech is difficult to understand, or if a hobgoblin can even converse properly with humans. As these thoughts swirl in his mind, he notices how nervous he is about entering a human town. He realizes that his nervousness could lead to mistakes that might expose him. But it can't be helped, as he needs to confirm whether his disguise is enough to pass without suspicion. The problem is, he doesn't know how to test it. Just then, a distant growling noise catches his attention. Following the sound, he comes across a carriage surrounded by wolves while a group of knights struggles to protect it. As he observes the situation, he sees the knights overwhelmed by the seemingly endless number of wolves appearing from nowhere. As a knight struggles against a wolf, the virus comes to the rescue and eliminates it using the condition covert. Startled by his sudden arrival, the knight asks who he is and when he got there. The virus then awkwardly responds with a poorly pronounced hello. The knights are very confused by his speech and ask if he meant to say hello. Hearing this, the virus is very happy and relieved, as it means they understand him. He explains that he has come to save them, and the knights question whether it's true, to which he replies affirmatively. Since they aren't attacking him, he assumes they haven't realized he's a goblin, which makes him feel greatly relieved. However, the knights mistake his poor pronunciation for fear and assume he isn't capable of fighting. As a result, they advise him to quickly get behind them for safety. Just then, as a wolf is about to attack him from behind, a knight quickly warns him to watch out. Heeding the knight's warning, he swiftly blocks the wolf's attack with his hand. Annoyed that the wolf interrupted his conversation, he slams it into the ground, eliminating it instantly. The knights stare in shock at his strength, while someone inside the carriage watches the scene unfold quietly. Then more wolves notice the virus and rush toward him, and he quickly realizes that if his clothes rip, his green skin might be exposed. To avoid this, he plans to infect the wolves and apply negative conditions to take them down quickly. As he spreads the virus particles into the air to infect the wolves, the knights decide to step forward to help. Before he can stop them, the virus enters their bodies, successfully infecting them. This results in him receiving the conditions parry, reflexes, dynamic vision, and desertion. He is shocked that this happened, as he never even imagined something like this could occur. He then starts to panic, wondering what to do now, as he knows nothing about this world's medicine, yet he has accidentally infected a human. He worries that if a mage or medieval doctor discovers the virus cells inside the infected knights, they might use something like cleansing magic to eradicate them. This could be the beginning of humans learning about him, and they might even develop a vaccine that could completely wipe him out. Just thinking about this terrifies him so much that he unconsciously begins swinging his sword while wondering what he's going to do next. This frightens the wolves so much that they flee, which impresses the knights, who praise his battle against them. Since he has displayed such inhuman strength, the knights believe him to be some famous swordsman. So they request the honor of seeing his face and knowing his name. This makes him incredibly nervous, and before he can say anything, his attention shifts to a creaking sound coming from the carriage. Suddenly, the carriage door bursts open, and a man wearing a hat steps out. He greets the virus and expresses his gratitude, saying that who knows what would have happened if he hadn't been there. Earlier, the virus had assumed the carriage was empty since no one had come out to help or even see what was happening. But now he realizes someone was inside all along but wonders who this person is. Then, a knight addresses the man as Master Roy and asks if he is hurt, to which Roy replies that he is fine and that the carriage also seems to be undamaged, thanks to everyone's efforts in defending it. Later, the virus enters the carriage together with Roy and slowly heads toward the town of Faust, while the knights guard the carriage by walking beside it. Roy thanks the virus again, expressing how lucky they are to have run into him, and then introduces himself as Roy Endihart, a merchant who works for the Valkyrie Company. He explains that the scent of the specially ordered meat they were transporting to the town must have attracted the wolves. On top of that, the soldiers were already exhausted from the long journey up until now. While Roy continues talking, the virus is surprised to meet a merchant, and judging by his appearance, business must be going really well as he is traveling in a nice carriage and wearing high-quality clothes. He finds this encounter very lucky since he is currently dead broke, so he might receive a reward for rescuing them once they arrive in town. Roy then comments that, even if the knights were tired, he finds it really disappointing that they lost to the wolves, to which the virus awkwardly agrees. Roy then compliments him, saying that compared to the knights, his fight against the wolves was truly incredible. He isn't even sugarcoating it, as he has seen many adventurers fight, but never before has he witnessed someone like the virus. He also admires how fearless the virus was, not reckless savagery, but overwhelming confidence backed by skill. On top of that, he doesn't even seem tired, which really captivates Roy. The virus is overjoyed to hear these compliments and finds Roy refreshing, as he praises him without sarcasm, unlike typical rich people. But Roy doesn't stop there, as he continues saying that the way the virus fought was almost as if he wasn't afraid of death. This startles the virus for a moment, and he just hopes Roy is joking. Still, he is a virus, so he won't disappear as long as he isn't eradicated by some kind of medicine. Thinking about medicine, he suddenly remembers that he needs to gather information about this world's medical system. He decides to casually bring up the subject, starting by mentioning that he has noticed a lot of people getting sick recently. He then asks Roy if he is doing well, to which Roy replies that he is fine, but agrees that many people have fallen ill lately. He explains that it's due to a whirl of miasma approaching the city. Not only that, but it also seems that many people have recently found a crystal with strong mana, which has led to cases of mineral poisoning. This information surprises the virus, as it is his first time hearing about miasma or mineral sickness. He wonders what they are. Since these could be illnesses unique to this world, he decides to go along with the conversation, adding that, along with those illnesses, there are also viruses. Confused, Roy repeats the word virus, and then asks what it is, as he has never heard of it before. So he apologizes for his lack of knowledge on the subject. This really surprises the virus, and he wonders if Roy truly doesn't know about viruses, as he is a merchant who is supposed to be aware of these things for his business. This means that either viruses haven't been discovered yet, or he's the only virus that exists in this world. But since he just mentioned the word virus, he quickly gives a false explanation, saying that viruses are crystals recently discovered. Roy easily believes this information, though he does find the name a bit strange. The virus is glad he managed to deceive him, and since viruses haven't been discovered in this world, or perhaps don't exist, he can infect anyone, like an all-you-can-infect buffet. Still, he decides to be very careful, as those soldiers were quite skilled, which is evident from the valuable conditions he acquired from them. Though he already infected them once, it was accidental, so there might not have been enough virus cells in them to gain all the conditions. Thinking it would be useful to get more, he increases the density of his virus cells. As a result, he acquires the conditions combat, instincts, evasion, composure, and intuition. While he finds these conditions very versatile, the system continues informing him that he has also acquired lurking, deception, cunning, and drug resistance. This shocks the virus, and he finds these conditions particularly disturbing. He asks Roy if the soldiers are his subordinates, To which Roy replies that, aside from the coachman, none of them are company employees. Instead, they are mercenaries he hired to escort him safely through the jungle. Roy finds it very amusing that, although he hired them for protection, in the end, they were all saved by someone else, which makes him wonder why he even hired them in the first place. While he finds the mercenaries very suspicious, the system informs him that it has discovered even more conditions: presence of mind, negotiation, persuasion, and placation. This confuses the virus, as these aren't typical mercenary-like conditions. He wonders where they came from, but then he realizes that because the window was open, Roy also got infected. This makes him realize that spreading the virus in a small space isn't a good idea at all. However, it can't be helped, and he hopes he won't get into trouble because of this. Still, it's not all bad, as Roy's merchant-like conditions will be very useful when he starts living in the town. Setting that aside, the virus speculates that, judging by Roy's conditions, he must be a highly skilled merchant. That means he might be targeted by a rival merchant, and considering the mercenaries have those disturbing conditions, they could have been hired to eliminate Roy. Though it's just speculation, if that were to happen, and he saved Roy's life again, he might get double the reward. That would mean securing his research and living expenses right here and now. With this in mind, he tells Roy that he finds the mercenaries very suspicious. However, Roy doesn't hear him, and instead tells the virus to look outside, as they have arrived in the town of Faust. Although he guesses the virus might have already been here, he decides to introduce it anyway, and informs him that this is the town of Faust. They then get out of the carriage, where Roy tells him to wait for a while as his contract with the mercenaries ends here, so he has to take care of some formalities. Seeing the mercenaries being dismissed, the virus wonders if his suspicion that they were targeting Roy was really unfounded. After the mercenaries leave, Roy thanks him for waiting. Since he owes a large debt for the virus saving his life, he decides to offer him something. This makes the virus very excited, and he wonders if it is money. He is sure that it is money. However, instead, Roy gives him a card, explaining that this is a Valkyrie Company card, which is only given to certain special individuals. The virus is disappointed since it isn't what he expected, but he still finds the card very pretty. Roy then explains that he can use this card to get discounts on any of Valkyrie Company's products, and he can also show this card if he ever needs something from Roy. Learning this, the virus realizes that it's some sort of convenience card, which he finds very useful since he doesn't have any connections in this world, as having a supporter is more valuable than money right now. He then informs Roy that this is his first time in this city, and he doesn't know anyone, so he requests Roy's help in the future if he ever gets into trouble. Roy happily accepts his request and assures him that he will rush over any time if his savior needs something. Although the virus feels a little bad about using such a nice guy, it can't be helped, as a merchant's connections will be very useful, so he plans to take as much advantage as he can. Thus, he uses his infectivity trait to increase virus cells in Roy's body, resulting in him acquiring more conditions. As he excitedly waits for the system to reveal the conditions, it informs him that they are assassination, soundproof, invisibility, secrecy level 2, presence detection, presence concealment level 2, shadow magic aptitude, and acting. These conditions are so disturbing that he is left shocked and trembling. Then Roy takes a gold pouch from his assistant and decides to give it to the virus as gratitude. However, the virus quickly declines, giving the excuse that he can't accept money for good deeds. He then apologizes, saying he just remembered something very important and has to leave. Without hesitation, he runs for it, as he just realized that he had let his guard down the entire time, and the disturbing conditions he got in the carriage weren't from the mercenaries. Instead, they were from Roy. If he wants to live a quiet life and continue his research, he can't get involved with Roy any further. This confuses Roy, as the virus had just told him earlier that this was his first time in town and that he didn't know anyone. So what urgent business could he possibly have here? Thinking carefully, he wonders if the virus sensed something and fled because of it. However, he decides not to dwell on it too much. After all, the virus seems to have secrets of his own that he doesn't want to share. Since they are somewhat similar, he thinks they'll get along, and he especially looks forward to doing business with the virus in the future. Later, after mindlessly running around for a while, he stops in an alleyway to catch his breath. He believes it was the right decision to run as soon as he figured out that Roy is something like an assassin. But now he wonders if it was really necessary, since he has already infected Roy. meaning he will definitely be stronger if they were to fight. Still, it can't be helped. It's his first time seeing an assassin in person, so it's natural for him to be freaked out. Setting that aside, after running for so long, he feels exhausted and decides to check out the town to find a place to rest. Though he expected it since this is another world, he still can't help but feel amazed by the many different species of people in this town. Just as he starts getting excited, wondering what kind of conditions he will receive, someone yells from behind, calling out to him. As he turns around, he sees a hobbit-like person who informs him that he can't stand in front of their 3-star hotel in such dirty attire. Learning that this is a hotel, he inquires if he can stay there, to which the hobbit-like person awkwardly laughs and bluntly replies that they have no rooms available for someone as suspicious-looking as him. Since he can't stay there, he goes to another hotel and asks the cat person standing at the entrance if he can stay. The cat person also awkwardly laughs and bluntly replies that he seems a bit shady, so they can't allow it. He then tries another hotel, where an old elf man tells him that he smells like a ditch and looks like a murderer, which isn't his concern, but he still can't stay there if he doesn't have money. Receiving this awful treatment on his first day in town makes him want to return to the goblin's nest. He then tells the old man that although he doesn't have money, he has some items he can sell. The old man quickly yells that they only take cash. Feeling awful, he realizes that the human world really isn't such a decent place after all. Then the old man informs him that he can sell items at the Adventurers Guild for some cash. While he is surprised to hear about the Adventurers Guild, the old man adds that it'd be a pain later if rumors spread that he let someone stay for free. However, if he makes even a small amount of money from the guild, he can stay, even if he's short on funds. Hearing this, he realizes that there are some good people here too. Later he arrives in front of the Adventurers Guild building. As he enters, he wonders if it will be like an office building, but that turns out not to be the case. It looks more like a bar on a Friday night. He finds this to be a brilliant business idea since adventurers who just got paid are likely to spend their money here right away. Seeing the large crowd, he realizes that if he were to spread his virus now, he could acquire a bunch of conditions. However, he decides to play it safe and avoid making any big moves until he knows the town better. As he walks inside, looking for a place to cash in the items he has, he notices that everyone is staring at him. This makes him realize that his appearance really stands out. Since it can't be helped, he decides to quickly sell the electric bear's fur and leave quietly without drawing any more attention. Just then, he notices a pretty woman waving at him from behind a desk, making him wonder if she is a receptionist. He quickly approaches and greets her awkwardly, to which she responds with a greeting of her own and asks if he is new here. When he replies affirmatively, the woman slides a paper across the table and informs him that this is the adventurer registration form. Her speedy recruitment attempt surprises him, and he quickly explains that he is from a remote countryside and doesn't have an ID or anything. She reassures him that it's fine since the Adventurers Guild operates entirely on a merit system. They welcome anyone, even those in similar situations to his, and they are always short on manpower, so it isn't an issue. She then offers to assist him in filling out the registration form and asks for his name. He considers giving his real name, but since this is his new life, he decides to create a new one and introduces himself as Walker Parasite. Walker comes from translating his previous name into English, while parasite he believes is the French word for parasite. Though he comes up with it on the spot, it feels like it suits him, even though he isn't actually a parasite. Once they finish the registration, the receptionist hands him his name tag and a grade 6 adventurer card, which functions as a rank verification. She informs him that if he ranks up to grade 4, he'll be able to use it as an official ID everywhere, making it very useful. Taking the card and name tag, he analyzes it and finds it similar to dog tags from his previous world. The receptionist then mentions that starting out solo is difficult, but since he looks well built, she is sure he will quickly be able to form a party, as he comes across as a rookie with a lot of potential. Since this seems to be his first time adventuring, she decides to help him pick a quest. She suggests the F-rank medical herb collection quest, or the E-rank horned rabbit subjugation quest. Before she can suggest more, he interrupts and takes out the electric bear's fur, asking if he can sell it here. This really surprises her, that he managed to harvest something before even becoming an adventurer. But as she takes a closer look at the fur, she is left in utter shock, as this is the S-rank electric bear from a subjugation request that was just issued. Since she says this out loud, It catches the attention of everyone in the guild hall, and they start chatting about the electric bear. The receptionist woman then asks the virus, who is now known as Parasite, how he obtained the electric bear's fur. He replies that he defeated it and asks if there is a problem. Upon learning that the electric bear was a monster meant to be subjugated, he realizes it must be a big deal. And now that he has openly declared defeating it, he has drawn a lot of unnecessary attention. The receptionist woman then informs him that there isn't a problem. But considering how incredibly strong an electric monster is, it's hard to believe someone took it down alone. Parasite quickly apologizes, clarifying that he was just showing off, and in truth he took down the monster with a team of 20 people, which is technically true since there were 20 goblins. He also adds that it was so difficult that many people died, but they somehow managed, which is to be expected from a promising rookie like him. Though his story is somewhat convincing, the receptionist woman still finds it hard to believe but decides to go along with it. She then informs him that as long as he completes the quests, the guild staff won't pry for details, since he has brought proof of the electric bear's subjugation. She takes out a gold pouch and hands it to him as the reward. As everyone in the guild is intensely staring at him, he quickly takes the pouch and puts it in his pocket. He feels relieved that he was finally able to get some cash. Now with that settled, he decides to leave quickly, since he isn't great at interacting with people, and on top of that, he is standing out in a bad way. Though he is glad they didn't pry for more details, he realizes that this guild is a dangerous place, since they accept just anyone, possibly even criminals. He also suspects that although the receptionist woman looks nice and normal, she's probably very skilled, as she has a few scratches here and there. Not only that, but he can also tell, even through her clothes, that she trains very hard. Since it seems like he might get some useful conditions from her, he is considering infecting her right now. While he is lost in thought, he doesn't notice that his face is accidentally angled toward her chest. As she awkwardly clears her throat, he quickly realizes this and tries to clarify that he wasn't looking at that. She then requests him to move aside as the next person is waiting in line. This makes him feel very awkward, and as he turns to inform the next person that he is done, he is surprised to see that the person waiting is Elena. While he is frozen in shock upon seeing her, Elena asks if she can go next, to which Parasite quickly responds with a yes. She then compliments him, saying how amazing it is that he managed to defeat an electric bear, giving him huge props for it. After that, she walks to the receptionist's desk, while Parasite is still very surprised, as he didn't expect to run into her here at all. Judging by the fact that she is submitting herbs to the receptionist, it seems she actually continued being an adventurer, which makes him really glad. While the receptionist informs Elena that the number and quality of the herbs are perfect, Parasite orders a beer and sits on a chair near her. He really wants to talk to her since he worries about whether things have gone well for her after they met in the jungle, but he can't, as he was a wolf when he saved her, so she wouldn't recognize him now, and it would be very suspicious if he approached her out of the blue. After receiving the reward for the herbs, Elena asks the receptionist about the party, to which she apologizes, informing her that there don't seem to be any parties looking to recruit her yet. Though the news saddens her, she handles it well since she's already used to it by now. Overhearing their conversation, Parasite realizes she is still going solo, which makes sense, as all the adventurers here look very strong, so she'd probably end up being a liability to them. Although he feels bad for her, he convinces himself that this is for her own good since she isn't suited for this rough kind of guild. As Elena is leaving the guild, a man calls out to her from behind, making Parasite wonder if she's being recruited. Elena then replies awkwardly, addressing him as Mr. Gajil, while Parasite wishes the man would just leave her alone, as she isn't suited for this kind of dangerous work. Gajil then asks Elena if she has found a party, to which she replies that she hasn't. He then acts sympathetic, saying he understands how she feels and how he would love to recruit her, but his party doesn't have room for rookies. Then, with a sarcastic tone, he adds that there's no way he could abandon a starry-eyed girl who came all the way from the countryside. He then suggests introducing her to another line of work, but before he can finish, she quickly backs away, saying she has already turned down their offer. Seeing the scene unfold, he realizes that they are not actually recruiting her, and although he would love to help, he can't afford to stand out after what just happened earlier. But he believes it's fine as that with so many people here, someone with a strong sense of justice will surely step in. However, instead of helping, they all start making fun of the situation, telling Elena that she would make more money than she would picking herbs. Seeing this, Parasite feels disgusted, wondering what's wrong with these people and why no one will help. Then, Gajil wraps his arm around Elena's shoulder, telling her to come with him and at least take a look at what he's offering. Elena then starts tearing up and yells at Gajil to get his hand off her. Watching this unfold, Parasite recalls the moment when Elena shared her feelings about wanting to become stronger to protect everyone in her village. Remembering this, he snaps and calls out to Gajil, telling him to knock it off since Elena doesn't like it. Hearing this, Gajil turns around and bursts out laughing at Parasite, mocking his voice and saying he sounds like a disgusting hobgoblin. Then the guy glares at him and, in a serious tone, warns Parasite that he's just an outsider and should stay out of this if he doesn't want to get hurt. In response, Parasite declares that he is that girl's party member, which shocks Elena. Gajil then laughs again, saying that Parasite must be insane for partying up with this trash. He then assumes Parasite has the same intentions as him, so he asks him if he is also in the same business and adds that, while someone as useless as her is only suited to be sold off, he found her first. After saying that, he throws a punch at Parasite, which Parasite easily stops just by grabbing his hand. Stunned, Gajil tries to shake free, but he just can't, which makes him realize that Parasite is stronger, but he refuses to accept it. Since dragging out this fight would be troublesome, Parasite exhales virus cells through his helmet, infecting Gajil. After significantly weakening him with negative conditions, he uses magic generation and electromagnetic release to strike Gajil with lightning. As Gajil collapses to his knees, still being electrocuted, his party members grow confused and begin questioning what's going on. The mage from Gajil's party earlier assumes Parasite is a fighter, judging by his physique. But since he turns out to be a mage, he is confident he won't lose, as he is the fastest caster in the guild. He then begins chanting to attack, but suddenly realizes that Parasite didn't chant when he used lightning magic. As he wonders how he did it, Parasite attacks him with lightning. Then the beastman from Gajil's party tries to stab Parasite from behind with a knife, but Parasite blocks it with his hand, resulting in the blade piercing through it. The beastman is shocked and asks Parasite if he doesn't feel pain, but before he can react further, he is sent flying with a punch. The entire guild falls silent as Gajil and his party are effortlessly defeated, making Parasite extremely nervous. The silence is finally broken when someone asks who Parasite is and how Gajil could have lost so easily. Even Elena is visibly surprised. Realizing he may have gone too far, Parasite quickly apologizes to her, saying he acted excessively. As Elena tries to say something, Parasite notices the receptionists whispering among themselves, which makes him panic. He hastily heads for the exit, apologizing to Elena again for causing trouble. As he dashes through the guild's entrance, Elena's eyes widen, as if she realizes something. She then quickly chases after him, calling for him to wait. When he stops, she thanks him for saving her and hesitates before saying something. Gathering her courage, she asks him if he would be willing to form a party with her. After saying that, she looks at him with a determined expression, while Parasite is surprised and wonders what she's even talking about. Before anything else, he asks if she doesn't think what he did was strange. She responds, saying absolutely not, as she understands he only did it to help her. Although she knows it's a bit shameless to suddenly ask him to form a party with her, she believes he is the only one who can. Parasite quickly refuses, saying that based on what he saw earlier, it would be best if she didn't get involved in such dangerous work. He apologizes and suggests she give up on this line of work and find something more stable. She replies with a smile, saying it's fine, and although it's a pity, she's used to being turned down, so she tells him not to worry about it, as she will keep picking herbs until she finds someone to form a party with. Hearing this, he asks if she still plans to continue despite everything she's been through. She responds firmly, saying of course, as being an adventurer and protecting everyone is her dream. Seeing her so determined, he wonders if he should form a party with her, as an experiment since he doesn't really know much about this world. He believes he is doing this not because he is getting swept up in her pace, but because he needs somebody he can trust right now. So it doesn't matter if she's weak or not. She seems trustworthy. Thus, he decides to form a party with her. He then looks up to avoid her gaze and says that he has actually been looking to join a party as well. So if she's up for it, they could try teaming up. And since it will be their first adventure, he suggests splitting the rewards equally. He also adds that he will teach her how to fight properly. Elena is so shocked that she starts trembling and then bursts into tears. Parasite then panics, asking her what's wrong, and if the terms are not good enough, or did she perhaps get hurt earlier. Elena quickly apologizes, saying she didn't mean to cry, but he just caught her off guard. She explains that she is so used to being alone that she doesn't know how to respond or express how happy she is. She admits that she thought she would be rejected this time as well, so when he accepted, she was overwhelmed. She thanks him from the bottom of her heart, to which Parasite responds with a casual nod, saying it's no problem and returning the sentiment. He can kind of understand her feelings, based on what he remembers of his previous life. That feeling of hitting rock bottom is all too familiar. With a happy smile, Elena then asks Parasite if he would like to go out for a meal together to celebrate, as she also wants to learn more about him. Later, they go to a tavern where Elena tells him to choose whatever he likes, as this is her way of thanking him for helping her. Since he doesn't know much about this world's food, he decides to order the same as Elena, which is called the meal of the day. Although he feels a bit bad that she has to pay when he just made a lot of money, he decides to accept it, since this is her way of showing gratitude. While the waiters bring their food, Elena apologizes for forgetting to introduce herself and then tells him her name, Elena, a 6th grade rookie adventurer. Parasite responds by introducing himself as Walker Parasite, a newly registered adventurer. Hearing that he just became an adventurer surprises Elena, as she totally thought he was a veteran since he defeated the electric bear. Parasite then lies with a false story, saying that he grew up in a remote mountain village where he lived as a hunter. Since he's a clueless guy who wandered into the city, he admits he lacks some common sense about this town. He also adds that he is self-taught when it comes to fighting, so he doesn't have much to teach her, but he will try. Completely believing his story, Elena offers to help him get used to city life and assures him that she will be fine learning to fight just by watching him. As he says that it'd be a huge help, Elena recalls him using magic earlier and compliments him on how amazing he is for being able to use both magic and martial arts. As he is about to think out loud that he can use magic because he is a virus, he quickly stops himself and instead agrees with her, saying that magic is really useful. This makes him realize that if he talks too much about it, he will end up completely blowing his cover. So he decides to make up an excuse and use it to gather information on magic, ensuring he can handle situations like this in the future. Just as he is thinking of an excuse, the waiter returns with their food, making him really excited since it has been so long since he had a meal like this. However, he quickly remembers that he is wearing a helmet to hide his hobgoblin face and wonders how he's supposed to eat with it on. As he panics, trying to figure out what to do, Elena points out that he can't start eating while still wearing the helmet. Parasite quickly makes up an excuse, saying that he can't take it off because he has pretty bad scars on his face, which is also why his voice sounds the way it does. Elena is shocked to learn this and quickly apologizes for being insensitive. Parasite reassures her that it's fine and not to worry about it. As Elena tells the waiter to pack the meal to go, Parasite apologizes, saying that he should have told her earlier. She assures him that it's fine, as injuries like this aren't uncommon in their line of work. She then shares that her village was once attacked by a hobgoblin, and many people died because of it, leaving the elderly and children defenseless. That's why she wants to become a strong adventurer, to protect everyone. She also declares that she will never forgive those goblins for what they did to her home. Hearing this, Parasite feels both awkward and nervous, as she is literally talking to a hobgoblin face to face. He starts to feel very guilty for deceiving her, and decides that if he is going to continue interacting with humans, he will need to find a human body as soon as possible. However, until then, he resolves to make sure she never finds out that he is a hobgoblin. As he is lost in thought, Elena suddenly calls his name, startling him. She then thanks him for forming a party with a stranger like her, and expresses how lucky she feels to have met someone like him. Parasite replies, telling her not to thank him yet, as he hasn't done anything, and instead thanks her for accepting him, despite how he looks. As Elena is saying that her grandma taught her never to judge a book by its cover, Parasite realizes that she is very innocent and kind, but also naive. He worries that the moment he takes his eyes off her, she will get herself into trouble. Thus, he resolves to stay on guard and step in to protect her if anything goes wrong. As the waiter brings the packed meal, Elena hands it to him and advises him to eat it slowly at the inn. Parasite thanks her and then suggests that he escort her back to where she is staying, as those guys from before might come back, which will put her in danger. Later, as they walk, Parasite apologizes for suddenly suggesting they walk together, to which Elena assures him that it's fine. Though she isn't sure if he'll believe her, she decides to tell him anyway, and mentions that the other day, she was out in the forest and a wolf helped her get back to town. While he is very shocked that she still remembers, Elena explains that what he just did felt similar to what the wolf did. Parasite tries to act oblivious, questioning whether a monster would really go out of its way to do something like that. Elena insists that it really happened, and even mentions that she had a chat with the wolf. She then mistakenly wonders if she might have a talent for taming monsters. Not wanting to cause further confusion, Parasite quickly changes the topic, saying that since tomorrow will be their first time working together, she should get plenty of rest and eat well beforehand. While Elena's eyes brim with excitement, Parasite feels a bit worried since it's their first time adventuring together. He just hopes their teamwork improves with time, and since it has been a while since he last worked with someone like this, he is also starting to get excited. The next day, as Parasite sleeps soundly in the inn, Elena suddenly yells out his name, greeting him with a loud, "Good morning." Parasite jolts awake, quickly leaping out of bed when he realizes she is here. She then calls out to him again from in front of the inn, asking if this is where he is staying. Seeing her from the window, he feels relieved that she is outside on the road and not right outside his room. He wonders why she is here when they were supposed to meet at the guild, and there's still an hour left. As he praises her dedication, she suddenly enters the inn and asks the innkeeper if someone named Walker Parasite is staying there. The innkeeper confirms that there is indeed a guest by that name, staying in the front room on the second floor. As Elena comes upstairs, Parasite hurriedly gets dressed, grumbling to himself about how these people don't seem to understand privacy if they're so quick to give out a client's details to anyone. After finishing dressing, he quickly steps out of his room and finds Elena right at the stairs. Panting, he greets her with a good morning and asks how she knew he was here. She greets him back and explains that she found his location by asking people if they had seen a big guy wearing a black cloak and a bird mask. Hearing this, Parasite is really annoyed, as he did expected this body to stand out, but not this much. Since it's only a matter of time before he is found out, he decides to hurry up and find a replacement body. Plus, he feels guilty about deceiving Elena. As he is lost in thought, Elena calls out to him, startling him, and he quickly responds, asking what it is. She then worriedly asks if he has changed his mind about partnering up since he seems a little out of it. He quickly denies it, saying that his plans haven't changed. He explains that this partnership is beneficial to him since he is new in town, so it will help him out a lot. Then, he suggests that since today is their first adventure as a party, they should head out straight away, to which Elena agrees with a bright smile. Later, they walk through a busy market on their way to the Adventurers Guild. Parasite is really excited, as he hasn't properly explored the town until now, so there are lots of things he has never seen before. Just then, a woman running a stall calls out to him, and as he approaches her, she offers him a drink called kaglam juice. Since he looks like he's from out of town, she even gives him a discount and asks for only 10 silvers. Since he already earned some money by selling the electrical bear's fur, he decides to try it. But just then, Elena stops him and shoves him aside. She then tells the woman that 10 silver coins is double the market price for the juice. Getting caught overcharging, the woman smiles awkwardly and quickly backtracks, saying she meant 2 juices for 10 silver. Since that's the case, Parasite tells her that he'll take 2 juices, which annoys her. But since it can't be helped, she takes out another one. Elena then advises Parasite not to trust people so blindly, explaining that what the woman did is a common market tactic to sell things for more than they're worth. Hearing this, Parasite thinks that she's one to talk, considering she blindly trusted a stranger to be her party member. But he can't exactly say that to her. Instead, he praises her, saying how amazing she is for having experience in these things. She replies that it's only natural since she couldn't make money right from the start as an adventurer like he could. She adds that there were times when she was so broke that she had to survive by eating weeds and herbs from her quests just to save money. Shocked and concerned, Parasite tells her that if she was that poor, she shouldn't have bought him lunch yesterday. Seeing him so worried, she quickly reassures him that it's fine, as she had been saving up for a special occasion like that anyway. Hearing this, he is so moved that he wonders how this girl can be so sweet. He is now determined to complete some quests so that she can finally eat some good food. While drinking the juice, he tells Elena that they should hurry and get a quest from the guild, and after getting paid, they will come back to the market. She agrees with a bright smile, but also expresses her concern that he will end up getting tricked again like earlier. That's why she declares that she'll be keeping a close eye on him so that he doesn't fall for another scam. Parasite thanks her for helping him out and believes that this makes them even, as he also plans to keep an eye on her to make sure she doesn't get into trouble either. Later, when they arrive at the guild and inform the receptionist that they have formed a party, she is visibly shocked. She asks Elena again if she is really teaming up with this person, to which Elena confidently replies yes, while Parasite feels a bit awkward. Elena explains that although his appearance is a bit unusual, he is actually a really nice person, which is evident since he helped her yesterday. Although the receptionist acknowledges this, she averts her eyes to Parasite and stares at him intensely, making him feel very uncomfortable. He realizes that she is highly suspicious of him, and not just her. He can also feel the other adventurers watching him closely, which is probably because of what happened yesterday. He then tries to appear harmless by forcing a smile through his helmet, and asks the receptionist if there are any quests suitable for two novices like them. Still finding him suspicious, she assumes he is capable of taking on S-rank quests. Based on what she witnessed yesterday, she is convinced that he single-handedly defeated that electric bear. Since he can't argue with her about that, he explains that they are looking for something that will also help train Elena. Hearing this, she checks the quest list, and after reviewing it, she suggests the Horned Rabbit quest. She explains that the quest mainly involves collecting the rabbit's horns, which are often used as ornaments, making them common targets for collection quests. She adds that their solitary nature is a bit unusual given their size, which is exactly why they are perfect targets for novices. After she finishes explaining, Elena quickly accepts the quest and promises to do her best. With the quest now accepted, Parasite reassures the receptionist not to worry, as he will be supporting Elena. However, his support is exactly what worries her. So she holds Elena's hand and asks her to be extra careful. As Elena awkwardly replies that she will, Parasite just hopes the receptionist does not think he is anything like Gajil and his group. However, it can't be helped, as his first impression was terrible. He wonders if by properly completing some quests with Elena, he might gain a bit of trust from everyone. Later they arrive in the forest where the horned rabbit is supposed to live, but for some reason, it is nowhere to be seen. Since they have been searching for hours already, Parasite asks Elena if these rabbits are rare. Elena replies that they are not rare and normally not hard to find either. However, since there isn't a single one in sight, she suspects that some goblins may have been here recently, which could explain why the rabbits are missing. Upon hearing this, Parasite panics, thinking it might be his fault. Since he is a hobgoblin, the rabbits may have sensed him from afar and quickly gone into hiding. If that is the case, finding them is going to be very difficult. However, there is no way he is going to let their first mission end in failure. He tells Elena that he will use magic to find the rabbits, which could be dangerous. So he asks her to back away a little. Confused, she agrees and steps back, asking if magic can really help locate them. Parasite then spreads the virus cells, planning to use the conditions he acquired from Roy. He then activates Presence Concealment Level 2 to erase all traces of him being a hobgoblin, and then uses Presence Detection to sense any living creatures around him. Upon activating these condition combos, he quickly detects something inside a nearby hollow log. He then quickly informs Elena that he senses something inside the log and suggests they check it out. This impresses Elena greatly, and she even calls him a genius, as the magic he just performed is advanced spatial perception magic. Parasite awkwardly replies, making the excuse that he grew up in the mountains and didn't know it was anything special. With that settled, Elena tells him that before they continue, there is something she wants to ask. She requests that he not use any magic on her to strengthen her. Even though it may seem strange coming from someone as weak as her, she wants to grow stronger through her own efforts. Parasite assures her that he won't do that, as it would be for the best. After all, he won't always be around. Elena thanks him for understanding. Parasite then realizes that before coming to town, he enjoyed using his power to infect monsters and acquire their conditions as much as possible. But now that he thinks about it, there are still many things about the virus that he doesn't fully understand. For example, once he infects someone, he has no idea how to undo it. This is why, even if he wants to use his power to make Elena stronger, he shouldn't use it on her. He then suggests they check the log quickly before the rabbit escapes, to which she agrees. After approaching the log, Parasite explains that they will cover both ends of the log to block the rabbit's escape and tells Elena to be careful on her end. He then tries to take a look inside the log, but Elena quickly warns him that it's not a good idea, as horned rabbits have a very strong charge attack. However, it's already too late, as before he can even move away, the horned rabbit charges at him with its horns and strikes his helmet. The impact causes his helmet to fly open, revealing his hobgoblin face. Fortunately, he manages to close it before Elena can see him. Worried, she asks if he's okay, to which he replies that he's fine and then asks about the rabbit. She reassures him that it won't get far, as its horns make it slower than a normal rabbit. She then suggests they start chasing it immediately, to which Parasite agrees. After what just happened right now, he feels very useless, and even though Elena may be weak, she's far more competent than him. As they chase the rabbit, it quickly heads toward a hole, and when Parasite tries to stop it, Elena quickly tells him to wait. She then informs him that the hole the rabbit is trying to enter, along with many others nearby, are rock mole burrows. He then asks what a rock mole is, to which she explains that they are mid-sized monsters that are stronger than horned rabbits. Just then, a rock mole emerges from the ground, while Elena explains that they eat soil, which then solidifies around them like an armor of stone, as she adds that their rock armor is a special kind of stone that can't be easily broken. More rock moles emerge from the ground. Seeing their numbers, Parasite asks Elena if she can catch the horned rabbit while he deals with the rock moles. She replies that she can and tells him to leave it to her, as at the very least, she'll keep it busy. However, she worries about him and asks if he can handle so many by himself. He reassures her that he will be fine, as he is confident in his strength, and besides that, he can also use magic, which is actually the virus cells he spreads. Thanks to this, he successfully infects all the monsters nearby, and acquires the conditions: leap, thrust, kinetic vision, big eater, hook claws, excavation, rocky skin, and anesthetic secretions. Additionally, he acquires danger detection again, which then merges and upgrades to level 2. Now that he has successfully infected the rabbit, he doesn't have to worry about something happening to Elena. Though she probably wouldn't like it if she knew, it can't be helped. Considering how weak she is now, she could end up getting badly hurt. Thus, he decides to weaken the horned rabbit slightly and let Elena build up some confidence. As the horned rabbit runs away, and the rock moles charge at them, Parasite tells Elena to quickly chase after the rabbit while he deals with the rock moles. Following his command, she immediately goes after the rabbit, while Parasite blocks a rock mole's attack with his sword. This makes him realize that although they are somewhat strong, they don't hold a candle to a hobgoblin like him. Since nothing special needs to be done, he quickly activates the condition brute force and slams the rock mole to the ground. As the other rock moles try to attack, he precisely slashes them in the belly area that isn't covered by their armor, easily eliminating them. With that done, he now worries about Elena, as despite the rabbit being small, she may be having difficulty catching it. If she struggles to keep up, he plans to activate a few conditions to weaken the rabbit. However, as he takes control of the rabbit, he is shocked to see that not only is Elena completely focused, but she is also attacking skillfully and swiftly with her sword. He then lets go of his control over the rabbit, and as he watches their fight from a third-person perspective, he is surprised to see that Elena and the rabbit are evenly matched. This makes him wonder how those goblins from before were able to overwhelm her. However, as he observes her fight, he notices how intensely she focuses on her opponent and realizes why she struggled against the goblins. It's because she lacks spatial awareness, which makes her vulnerable to groups of enemies. Considering that she has been solo until now, she might not have realized this. But if he provides her some support and lets her fight one-on-one, he is certain she can show her true potential. Just then, Elena successfully lands a strike on the rabbit's horn, causing it to break off and fall to the ground. With the heavy horn detached from its body, the rabbit becomes much faster and quickly runs away. Since the quest only requires collecting the rabbit's horn, Elena doesn't chase after it. As she picks up the horn, she is still in disbelief and tells Parasite that she actually did it. He replies informing that he watched the entire fight and found it absolutely incredible. She is so shocked by her own success that she asks Parasite if he used any magic on her. He replies that he didn't do anything. It was entirely her own strength that allowed her to defeat the horned rabbit. Because of that, he declares that he believes she may have real talent as an adventurer. Hearing this, Elena suddenly starts crying, causing Parasite to panic, and he asks her why she's crying again. She apologizes, saying she couldn't help it, as it's the first time anyone has ever said something like that to her. Parasite then tells her that since this is his first quest, he isn't entirely confident in his judgment yet. Elena agrees with him, and promises to do her best from now on and not let him down. Later, they arrive at the Adventurers Guild, and after submitting the horned rabbit's horn, they receive 2 gold pouches as the quest reward. The receptionist even praises Elena, saying that it's an incredible achievement for a grade 6 adventurer to complete a horned rabbit quest on the first try. As she holds the gold pouch in her hand, Elena's heart races with surprise, and she asks what she should do since she has never received this much before. Parasite tells her that she should be proud and spend it however she likes, since she was the one who defeated the horned rabbit. Elena replies with a smile, saying that she was only able to do it because of his support. She then recalls a bag she has always wanted to buy, and asks if she can go and purchase it. Parasite replies that of course she can, and asks if she wants to head to the marketplace right away. Elena explains that the bag she wants is a bit special, and because of that, there are many fake ones in the marketplace. So she is thinking of buying it from a well-respected shop, and she knows of one called Valkyrie Company. Parasite is immediately shaken upon hearing this familiar name, as it's the shop run by Roy, a merchant he met in the forest, and whom he suspects to be an assassin. Elena mentions that the shop assistants there are very nice, and even offer warranties, which is why she can shop there with peace of mind. Although Parasite has a hard time believing this, he reasons that Roy has no reason to target him, especially since he saved him from the wolves. Later, they arrive in front of Valkyrie Company's shop. Seeing how massive it is, Parasite realizes that he was right. Roy's business is really booming. Just as they are about to enter, someone calls out to them from behind, and that person turns out to be Roy, who has just arrived with his carriage. While Parasite is annoyed to run into him, Roy explains that he was just coming to check on the store, but fortunately spotted him at the entrance. He expresses how happy he is that Parasite decided to shop at his store right away. Surprised that they know each other, Elena asks Parasite if Roy is his friend, to which he replies with a weak yes. Roy then asks who the young lady beside him is, and Elena quickly introduces herself as Parasite's party member. Upon hearing this, Roy stares at her for a moment before whispering to Parasite that he has done a nice job, completely misunderstanding the situation. Not wanting to cause further misunderstandings or get into trouble, Parasite decides to quickly get what they need and leave. He then tells Elena that since Roy came here to check on the store, he must be very busy, so she should hurry and buy what she needs. However, Roy quickly clarifies that he is not busy at all, and that showing hospitality to his savior is far more important. He then asks Parasite what he came here to buy, offering to give him whatever he wants. Hearing this, Parasite quickly refuses, considering that nothing is scarier than receiving something for free, thus he does not want to be in Roy's debt. Since Parasite refuses, Roy turns to Elena and asks what she wants. She tells him she came to buy a bag, and Roy immediately offers to give it to her for free. She quickly tries to refuse as well, but Roy insists, saying it's the least he can do since Parasite saved his life. He considers giving away a bag or two to be nowhere near enough to repay someone for saving his life. With that said, he welcomes them into his shop and invites them inside. After entering the shop, Parasite nervously glances around his surroundings while Elena excitedly looks at the shop's items. Roy then explains that although their products are a bit expensive because of their motto, fair trade, he can guarantee that they are all of good quality. He adds that his company has a good relationship with artisans, so they send their best products directly to his store. He also mentions that recently, many people have been using illegal slaves to make counterfeit products and sell them. Expressing his hatred for them, he says he can't forgive people for doing such things. Meanwhile, Parasite isn't really paying attention to him and is mainly focused on the shop. Earlier, he imagined it to be very high-end, but after looking around, he considers it more like a mass retailer. This makes shopping here very easy, which explains why Roy's business is so successful. Then, Roy's assistant brings out a bag and shows it to Elena, asking if she is looking for this particular item, the bag of holding. Elena becomes very happy upon seeing it, and confirms that this is the bag she has been searching for, because it has a button that won't rip even if someone puts a lot of things inside, and on top of that, it is enchanted with magic that allows it to store 5 times its normal capacity. Roy explains that these functions were added specifically for adventurers, and requests that she take it. Hesitant, she asks if he is sure, to which he affirms. He then asks Parasite if there's anything he likes, as he is willing to give it to him. However, Parasite quickly declines, saying he is fine. Though it's disappointing, Roy understands that Parasite doesn't want to be indebted to him. However, since this is repayment for saving his life, Roy urges him not to hold back. Parasite replies that it was really nothing, as Roy would have been able to take down the wolves even without his help. He adds that while he is very grateful Roy is giving the bag to Elena, he truly doesn't need anything. With that, he and Elena begin to leave, while he bids farewell to Roy, telling him to have a good day. As Roy waves while watching them leave, he looks forward to Parasite visiting his shop again. He then starts laughing and reveals that the wolves were actually set up by him to test how strong the mercenaries were. He is very impressed that Parasite was able to figure it out. Roy's assistant then confirms that the tracking charm placed on the bag is functioning normally, to which Roy replies that she did a good job. Since Elena seems so careful and kind, he wonders if she's from the countryside, as she also appears naive and cute. Roy believes that someone like her would fetch a high price on the black market. Meanwhile, as Elena giggles the whole time since they left the store, Parasite points out that she seems pretty happy. Elena replies that she actually is, as she feels like she has finally become a real adventurer with this bag. But setting that aside, she is very surprised to learn that he knows the owner of the Valkyrie company. Impressed, she remarks that he really is an amazing person. As he tries to avoid replying to her about that, he suddenly senses something and quickly looks behind him, confused. Elena asks what's the matter, to which he replies that he definitely felt like they were being watched, but then he tells her that it was probably just his imagination since they are in a busy area, to which Elena agrees. However, it isn't just his imagination, as he actually sensed someone using danger detection level 2, so there's no way he was imagining it. Now that he thinks about it, he finds it really strange that Roy knew his name before he even gave it. As he starts behaving somewhat strangely, Elena asks if he is really okay, to which he apologizes and says he is just a bit tired. Hearing this, Elena apologizes for making him walk her to the inn when he is already exhausted. She then tells him that she can go alone from here since her inn is just around the corner. However, Parasite quickly disagrees, insisting that he will walk her to the front of the inn, to which she accepts. He suspects that the people he sensed might be Roy's men, and since it seems like he is their only target, he quickly decides to hurry and drop Elena off at the inn before getting away from her as fast as possible. Later, as they arrive in front of the inn, Elena thanks him, to which Parasite replies that it was nothing. She then informs him that she will head to his inn at the same time tomorrow and requests that he not push himself if he gets tired. Parasite assures her that he will keep that in mind and that he'll be fine after a day's rest. As he says goodbye, Elena waves both hands with a warm smile and says she'll see him later. Seeing this, Parasite also starts waving back at her, while she continues to do the same. After reincarnating as a virus, he had some really twisted plans because of his past life, but after today, he feels like it might be nice to just spend every day normally with Elena like this. Thus, he is determined to prioritize securing her safety above everything else. So he plans to go back and observe the Valkyrie company's people, to make sure they aren't up to anything suspicious. As Elena watches Parasite leave, she realizes that the more she learns about him, the more unsure she becomes about whether she is qualified to be his partner. He also seems like someone who doesn't talk much about himself, so she is certain there is still a lot she doesn't know about him. While she is lost in thought, a person's silhouette appears behind her. She then turns around to enter the inn, but doesn't notice the mysterious man right in front of her, as she is too busy thinking about Parasite while staring down. She then decides to stop thinking about it and focus on training. At least this way, she won't be a burden to Parasite. With her head now clear, she heads toward the inn, only to be shocked when she sees the mysterious man approaching her. The next day, Parasite feels really sleepy, as he spent the entire night spying on Roy, who was really just checking on the shop. Setting that aside, he has been waiting for Elena, but she is late, even though it's long past their meeting time. He assumes she may have overslept, so he decides to go to her inn and check. Later, after checking her inn and not finding her there, he heads to the Adventurers Guild and asks the receptionist if Elena has come in today. The receptionist informs him that she hasn't seen Elena either, meaning she probably hasn't visited the guild. Finding it strange that she isn't here as well, Parasite suddenly hears someone laughing loudly. That person turns out to be Gajeel, who has just entered the guild hall with his party. He is laughing because he received some money and plans to spend it without a care. However, as soon as Parasite recognizes him and their eyes meet, Gajeel looks visibly shocked. Without hesitation, he quickly turns and leaves the guild hall with his party. Seeing this, Parasite becomes very suspicious and immediately dashes after them, confusing the receptionist. Considering that they ran the moment they saw him, and remembering they were the ones harassing Elena, Parasite has a really bad feeling about this. Since they are already out of sight before he can catch up, he activates condition presence detection, which shows a glowing thread leading in their direction. However, if they get too far away, he won't be able to track them with so many people around. Following the thread, he arrives in front of an alleyway. Wondering if they really went in there, he steps into the alley, only for someone to suddenly try to stab him in the neck. Reacting instantly, he grabs the attacker's hand, stopping the blade just in time. The attacker turns out to be Gajeel, who clearly intended to kill him. Since he is showing far more bloodlust than when they first fought back in the guild, Parasite's suspicions are confirmed. Then without any hesitation, he quickly activates Condition, electromagnetic release, and strikes Gajil with lightning. He then tells them that although they tried to catch him off guard and kill him, they failed because he had already casted magic on all of them beforehand. Now, if they don't answer his questions truthfully, he will make sure they suffer incredible pain. With that said, he asks them in a menacing voice, "Where is Elena?" Gajil nervously replies that he doesn't know anything and that it has nothing to do with him. Since Parasite can tell he's lying just from his facial expression, he strikes him with lightning again, this time much stronger and lasting longer. Unable to take it anymore, Gajil quickly begs him to stop using that weird magic, promising to confess everything. He admits that they sold her off as a slave. Upon hearing this, Parasite falls silent while Gajil continues, explaining that they had no choice. They would have been killed if they failed to complete their assigned tasks. Parasite then asks him where the slaves are now, to which Gajil starts laughing hysterically and refuses to say anything else, fearing for his life. Realizing that electrocution will take too long to get the information out of him, Parasite activates the conditions claw and body manipulation, transforming his hand into a claw, which shocks Gajil. He then raises his transformed claw and warns Gajil that if he doesn't want to die right now, before finishing his sentence, he suddenly strikes near him, demanding that he reveal everything. Terrified, Gajil quickly reveals that the slaves are being held in an abandoned fortress in the north. While his party members stare in shock at Parasite's transformed arm, Gajil adds that all the slaves have been gathered there, insisting that's all he knows and that he isn't lying. Parasite asks if all he needs to do is head north, and when Gajil replies affirmatively, he transforms his feet into claws. He then uses them to propel himself and jumps from one building's wall to another, climbing higher and higher. Seeing this, Gajil and his party are completely speechless as they realize that this guy is the real monster. Meanwhile, in the northern fortress where all the slaves are being held, a group of armed men guards them. Terrified and clueless about what's happening, Elena and the other girls, all of whom are handcuffed, look around their surroundings in horror. Just then, a hooded man approaches the guard watching over them and asks if these are all the slaves they bought this time. Hearing this, Elena quickly realizes they are dealing with slave traders, ones she has heard many rumors about, but she never imagined that one day she would fall into their hands. Despite the dangerous situation, her thoughts drift to Parasite, worrying that she might have caused trouble for him by disappearing without contacting him. However, she reassures herself that someone as kind as Parasite wouldn't have trouble finding a new party. Setting that thought aside, she quickly analyzes her surroundings and counts a total of 6 kidnapped individuals, including a small child. Suddenly, the hooded man grabs Elena by the face, pulling his own face close to hers. His gaunt features and unsettling eyes send a shiver down her spine. As Elena stares at him in shock, he remarks that she barely meets their requirements. Even though she is scared, she understands that her top priority is to find a way to escape with everyone. The hooded man then releases her and turns to the one who captured them, asking why this hall is much smaller than usual. The guy nervously explains that it's because they've recently attracted the attention of a troublesome figure, Roy, the owner of Valkyrie Company. That very same person is watching the entire situation unfold from a higher vantage point, accompanied by his assistant. Using binoculars, the assistant confirms that all 6 individuals are indeed the girls who recently went missing from the city. Roy finds this excellent. They managed to locate them in time, and the girls are alive and unharmed. Amused, he notes how the slave traders' habit of snatching up anything and everything they think is sellable has backfired. He explains that he was able to track them down thanks to the detection enchantment his assistant placed on Elena's bag. He then instructs his assistant to go ahead and rest, as there are only 20 enemies, none of whom have spotted him yet. Thus he believes taking them out will be fairly easy. Concerned, she asks him if he's sure that he won't need any help, to which he confidently replies that he won't. After all, assassination is what he does best. As he speaks, shadowy hands emerge from the tree's shadows, likely his ability. More of those shadowy hands rise from his own shadow, and he declares that he won't just eliminate them, he will wipe the entire place clean, as if nothing ever happened here. His assistant replies that she is aware of his plans, but since he has been working non-stop for the past few days, she asks if he ever gets tired. Roy responds that right now, he doesn't have the leeway to feel tired. If he lets those girls get taken by the black market thugs, they will spend the rest of their lives being exploited in some unfamiliar, faraway land. As he sees the little girl crying, he adds that he believes deals and business must always be fair to all parties, no matter what. Thus, he can't stand people who use underhanded methods to take unfair advantage of others. Just then, one of the kidnappers grabs the crying girl by her hair and yells at her to shut up. He complains about brats, saying they always scream and don't even fetch a good price. At that moment, Elena throws herself at the man, pushing him away from the little girl. She demands to know how he can do something so cruel to such a young child, to which the man responds by punching her. As the other thug yells at him, saying he can't injure the merchandise, the hooded man tells them it's fine. He believes that this kind of spirit makes them too difficult to sell anyway. With that, he pulls out a knife and points it at Elena, declaring that he is going to show her what happens to those who resist. As Elena struggles against the hooded man, Roy is surprised. He thought she was the timid type, but she turns out to be incredibly strong-willed. Since it's about time for him to step in, he figures that from where he's standing, he should be able to take them all down without revealing his face. But just then, he senses something and tells his assistant to stop, which confuses her. She asks him what's wrong. He replies that something is coming toward them from the forest at incredible speed. From what he can sense, it's a very powerful monster. And if they run into each other, things will get complicated. That monster is Parasite, who has dashed all the way from the town and suddenly lands between them. This shocks everyone, and as they wonder who this guy is that just leapt down from the sky, Parasite scans the area, looking for Elena. Then he spots her with her face bruised and a knife pressed to her neck by the hooded guy. As she recognizes him and calls out his name, Parasite instantly closes the distance and grabs the guy by the face, shoving him away from Elena. The guy quickly tries to shake free but can't, as Parasite's grip is as unyielding as solid stone, making him realize just how insanely strong this guy is. However, seeing Parasite's back completely exposed, the man decides to take advantage of the opening. He uses magic to create a crystal-like thing behind Parasite and drives it into his back, which makes Elena cry out his name in worry. However, Parasite is completely unaffected and casually pulls the crystal out of his back, leaving the man in shock. He stares in disbelief and demands to know why Parasite is still standing when that attack should have been enough to kill him. Without responding, Parasite points the crystal at him. Realizing what's about to happen, the man tries to plead for his life, but it's already too late. Elena and the other girls watch in horror as Parasite mercilessly eliminates him. Elena is especially shaken, and she softly calls out his name. As the thugs are left stunned by what just happened, they grow even more confused when Parasite starts counting their numbers and concludes that there are 20 of them. He then points his claw at them and declares that he is going to kill every single one of them, leaving no survivors. Overwhelmed by what just happened and seeing his claws, one of the thugs questions what is wrong with this guy's hands and feet. Parasite then continues, adding that even if they all attack him at once, they won't come close to defeating him. Not believing his words, they rush to attack him while telling him to shut up and insisting that he is outnumbered. In response, Parasite pulls his hand back and then swiftly swings his claw at the thug charging at him with an axe, slicing off both of the guy's hands. It happened so fast that Guy didn't even have the time to react. Parasite then catches the falling axe and immediately swings it at the thugs behind him. Seeing this, some of the thugs question whether he is even human, while others quickly try to escape. Unfortunately for them, Parasite notices their retreat, and since he promised to leave no survivors, he quickly leaps into the air to intercept them. Meanwhile, Roy and his assistant watch the entire scene from a distance and are very surprised. Seeing Parasite mercilessly slaughter the thugs is completely unexpected for Roy. He'd assumed Parasite was the friendly type, so he never could have guessed that he had a side like this. After their first encounter in the jungle, Roy became very curious about Parasite and tried to look into his past. However, he was shocked when he couldn't find anything. This is especially odd because, no matter who the person is, if Roy uses his connections to search for them, there should always be at least some information. He finds it truly bizarre, almost as if the man named Parasite came straight out of the forest, as if he was born there. As Parasite is about to eliminate a guy he paralyzed by infecting him, Elena calls out his name with teary eyes, telling him to stop. Hearing her voice, he turns around and notices that the girls with Elena are trembling in fear while she tells him that he may have overdone it. At her words, he looks around and sees the many bodies of the thugs he has killed, and was about to do the same to the last one as well. Realizing that he has snapped, he quickly lets go of the axe and approaches them, apologizing and saying he will remove their handcuffs right away. Seeing him coming toward them shocks the girls, but Elena quickly reassures them, telling them that he is a friend of hers. Parasite then proceeds to remove their handcuffs by breaking them, but instead of thanking him, the girls quickly back away, calling him a monster. While Elena is somewhat disappointed in them, Parasite apologizes to her and breaks open her handcuffs as well. As soon as she is freed, Elena quickly hugs Parasite, and with tears in her eyes, she apologizes for making him do something so cruel, even though he is such a kind person. Parasite then asks her in a shaky voice if she is not afraid of him, to which she firmly replies that she absolutely isn't, saying how could she be, when he tried his best to fight for her safety. Though his expression is hidden behind his helmet, it is certain that he feels relieved as he softly thanks Elena, who continues crying while hugging him. Meanwhile, the last thug Parasite was about to kill, but didn't because Elena told him to stop, takes the opportunity and quickly runs away. While fleeing in terror, he wonders what that monster was, and immediately decides to report Parasite to their HQ. Suddenly, as he is running, his shadow starts to shift, and then pierces straight through his head, eliminating him. It is revealed to be the work of Roy, who believes Parasite isn't a professional killer. After all, he didn't make sure he got all the thugs, and didn't even take care of the bodies before leaving. Roy then instructs his assistant to ensure the women who escaped, and the child among them, are safe, and that they don't speak about Parasite. As she accepts the task, he uses his shadowy hands to pick up the thug's body and absorb it into the darkness. Judging by the fact that Parasite has no records and seemingly came straight from the jungle, along with the way he completely covers his body, Roy is certain that Parasite is secretly a hobgoblin. However, after witnessing him in action today, Roy doubts that Parasite is just an ordinary one. He suspects this because Parasite appears to use some kind of magic that affects even the psychology of his opponents. Since Parasite seemed wary of him, Roy considers the possibility that he himself might already be under Parasite's influence. However, after watching him fight to protect Elena, Roy doesn't get the impression that Parasite is truly evil. He also doesn't seem to be actively threatening anyone. Although Roy admits he doesn't know Parasite's goals, he believes that if they can find common ground, Parasite could be the most powerful ally he could have. And if that's the case, having Parasite owe him a favor or two would put him in a great position. Setting his plans aside for now, Roy focuses on cleaning up the slave trader mess, starting by disposing of the bodies. As he uses his shadowy hands to erase the corpses into the darkness, he mutters about the mess Parasite has left behind, and estimates it will take him a while to clean everything up. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, as everyone chatters, one guy informs his friend that somebody actually eliminated the big shot Gajeel and his gang. Shocked, the friend questions if it's really true, to which the guy replies affirmatively. He explains that they were found dead in some back alley, which isn't too surprising since they were hated by so many people. But setting that aside, he is certain that the culprit is the big guy who hangs around Elena. Before he can say anything more, his friend interrupts him and points behind him. The very person they're talking about is right beside them. As Parasite passes by, he overhears their conversation and is shocked to hear that those guys are dead. After all, he only threatened them a little. He never took it any further than that. But even though they were bad people and he confronted them, he also took many lives right after that. Something he still doesn't understand why he did. Setting that aside, judging by how he's getting even more stares than usual today, he suspects the woman who ran away upon seeing him must have spread rumors about him being a monster or a murderer or something. Even though he saved them, the violent scene he showed them makes it unsurprising that they'd be wary of him. Just then, the receptionist lady notices Parasite and calls out his name with a bright smile. This surprises him, and he awkwardly greets her back while she asks if the rumors are true. Confused, he asks what rumor she's talking about, and she explains that she heard he scared off an entire gang of black market merchants all by himself. On top of that, he also saved a bunch of women from being trafficked. Parasite confirms that while the rumor is true, he believes he did much more than just scare them off. Hearing this, the receptionist finds it wonderful, as human trafficking is a very complicated and multifaceted issue. Because of that, the guild hasn't been able to do much about it, so she's relieved that he was there to help. As other adventurers overhear this, they are surprised that Parasite handled all of it by himself. Meanwhile, he is confused and wonders what's going on, as those women saw his mutated arms and witnessed so much violence that he was sure the rumor would be about a monster sighting instead. It's almost as if the more unflattering aspects of that night were left unsaid to the public. Then suddenly, Elena appears out of nowhere, and with a bright smile, says that Parasite is truly a wonderful person. Seeing her so suddenly, Parasite calls out her name, to which she cheerfully responds with a good morning. He then asks if it is really okay for her to be up and about, to which she assures him that it is. Thanks to him, she didn't suffer any major injuries, so she's feeling great and is ready to dive right back into work today. He then asks her if she is truly okay with being in the same party as someone like him. Hearing this, she sighs and tells him that she has already said it countless times, that he did his best to fight for her freedom. So how could she possibly hate him? Parasite is really touched by her words and realizes that she has incredible mental strength, considering that Night was terrifying enough to traumatize her. Elena then comments that his voice is a little clearer today than usual, to which Parasite replies that it might be because his injuries have healed a little. She is delighted to hear this and tells him that maybe one day he will be able to talk without his helmet on. Parasite awkwardly responds with a hesitant yes, and reveals that the real reason his voice sounds clearer is that he used body manipulation to slowly adjust to this body. With that said, it's time for them to gear up and sign up for their next job. Elena then asks the receptionist if there are any good quests available today. The receptionist suggests an E-rank quest involving the extermination of a group of goblins. While they haven't caused any trouble yet, she believes it would be better to eliminate them before they grow too large in number and start becoming a real threat. Parasite is shocked when he sees the map on the quest page, as it marks the location of the goblin tribe he used to live with. Elena strongly suggests they take the quest to prevent something like what happened to her village from happening again. She then expresses her hatred for goblins, saying they are the one creature she can never forgive. Hearing this, Parasite becomes very nervous. He then tries to avoid taking the quest by arguing that those goblins haven't harmed anyone, so they can't say for certain that all goblins are bad. The receptionist agrees with him but also points out that if the goblins start getting hungry, they could attack a human village. She also warns about the risk of them evolving into hobgoblins, which would cause an even bigger problem. Since he has no way to argue against this, Parasite quickly starts acting like he is in pain, holding his back. Worried, Elena quickly asks if he is okay, to which he replies with an apology, saying that his injuries from fighting the black market merchants have reopened. This makes her even more concerned, and Parasite informs her that it might be difficult for him to take on a quest today. Understanding his situation, she offers to walk him back to his inn, but Parasite quickly refuses, saying it's easier for him to walk alone. Instead, he requests that she not take any dangerous quests by herself and suggests she take a simple herb collection quest just for today. As he leaves, telling her bye, Elena is worried and wonders if he is really okay.